Grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine and tune in for Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy. On Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern, Linda creates sacred space for leading female luminaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. A soulful venue where guests openly share the fears and obstacles they've overcome, wisdom and lessons learned, and the personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic, soulful living.
Welcome to Inspired Conversations. I'm your host, Linda Joy, publisher of Aspire Magazine, the premier inspirational digital magazine for women since 2006. You know, how would your life be different if you loved yourself unconditionally? Have you ever considered that self-love is the foundation for a happy and fulfilled life? In this inspired conversation, Noemi Grace shares how to apply self-love as the key to miraculous transformation in any aspect of your life. And I have to tell you, self-love is something I've struggled with for the majority of my life, and maybe I'm just been really embracing it and owning it in the last 20 years. And I wanted this conversation to be brought to you today because I think it's so important, and I can't wait to share Noemi's brilliance and her wisdom with you. So let me tell you a little bit about my special guest. Noemi Grace is a psychotherapist and soul healer who channels new perspectives from the divine on unconditional self-love, forgiveness, divine grace, and life's purpose. Her new book, An Intimate Dialogue with God, The Miraculous Power of Unconditional Self-Love, is the first in a series of books that shares her transformative communication with the divine and her experience as she learns to apply the divine messages to her life. Her passions include sharing these beautiful, uplifting messages and helping people heal their hearts, minds, and souls. As a soul healer, she works with clients to heal wounds and patterns that have been resistant to other healing modalities. And a unique aspect of her work is that she channels answers to people's burning questions directly from the divine. Welcome, Noemi.
Oh, thank you so much, Linda. It's such a pleasure to be here.
You and I have connected, I'd say, in the last 10 months. I've gotten to know you and your message and your beautiful way of showing up for your community and your audience, sharing your message. Now, I just described what you do now, but take us back a little bit on your journey that led you to this work. Was there a moment of transformation in your own life?
Oh, many, many, many moments of transformation. 25 years ago, couldn't imagine, 5 years ago, I couldn't imagine some of the work I'm doing now. But yes, it was, for me, there was a willingness to be honest with myself and tell myself the truth when I became so unhappy in life and so stuck and so feeling so lost, and to tell myself the truth about that and to stop running around chasing, working on different things. And so I started my adult life as a software engineer and worked at that for about 20 years. But after about 2 years, the first 2 years were fun. And then after that, I was increasingly feeling like for me, it was almost like cutting part of myself off to do the job, because I just had a sense that it wasn't me. And I didn't really have any idea or any sense of what was me, but I just felt like this is not me. And I felt like a little piece of me was dying every day. And so it's been along the way different points where I was willing to say, this isn't me. I need to make a change, and get to the point where I was willing to make that change. So I went from software engineer to going back to school at 39 to train to be a psychotherapist, and then doing that for quite some time, and then studying different healing modalities and spiritual studying with different spiritual teachers to get to the point where I started to receive messages from the divine myself, and it wasn't something that I expected to happen. It was something I wanted to happen, but it wasn't something I expected to happen. So yeah, there were so many, if I look back, so many. I mean, I could talk for hours on all the key points there, but there are definitely so many points where it was that willingness to go, yeah, this is really sucking my life force. This is taking too much out of me, what I'm doing with my life, and this is not making me happy. This is actually making me miserable, and what can I do differently?
Oh, I can really relate with that, as in so many of my listeners and many of the guests. It's this moment of waking up in your life going, how the hell did I get here? And feeling like a stranger in your own life. Does that encapsulate what you felt inside?
Oh, absolutely. And lost, just really lost, not having, like being, I love hiking, and there have been times when I've been lost in the woods, and really, this was like really lost and going, I have no idea which way to go. I don't know, which way at all that I came from. And so that sense of really feeling lost and not knowing who I was, where I was, how to get out of that lost place.
Now, it sounds like, though, that you were able to listen, like you said, after 2 years, right? You knew it wasn't for you. That it sounds like to me that you were willing to listen, even though you didn't know the next steps.
Yes, and although at that point I wasn't willing to listen, but I just remember saying, I was 28, and I said, there is no way I can do this past 40 because I think it'll kill me. That I remember saying that to somebody. I have to change careers before by the time I'm 40, and so I knew at 28, which was probably a little more than 2 years in, but that this was just like taking my joy, and it was feeling, for me, it just wasn't me. I'm not saying that it's a bad career choice. It's a great career choice from so many ways, but for me, it wasn't me. So it was the willingness to be honest with myself first, because we're really good, and I'm really good too, at spinning these stories and telling myself, oh, well, it's really not that bad, or it's just bad. If I get a different job, I'll be better, and and having a story that sort of makes it okay, in quotes, that sort of minimizes what isn't working for us.
And I can relate, because one of the feelings I had sitting in a cubicle, I had just got off welfare and got my first job. This is going back almost 30 years. I remember looking around at the people who had been there for so long, and I was almost the same time frame, 2 years in. And I realized, and I didn't speak this language, Noemi. I remember saying, my soul will die if I stay here. Look at them. They've lost, there's no joy. And I stayed, and I'm curious to see the reasons you stayed. Even though I had that epiphany and it was a knowing, I can still bring myself back to that moment. I stayed because I was like, what will my family think if I leave a paying job after finally getting my life together? And who am I to walk away from this? Like all these questions of doubt. And you and I know that we have to honor ourselves first before we can honor everyone else. Did you go through that cycle of thoughts of what will people think if I walk away from this career that everyone says they, is a great career?
Sure. I mean, I even before that, I would be like, well, I gave myself 12 years because I felt like I had a master's degree in computer science, and there was a lot of money invested into my education, and I felt like I owed it to myself to honor that. And, you spend all that money, you have to do this. It's not, you don't have a choice, because you spend so many thousands on your education, you have to, you can't just walk away from that. That's not right. So there was this sense of it was almost like a moral obligation to stay. And then, of course, once I knew that I was I didn't know what else to do, but I had joined a women's group, and then I started to be the leader of the weekly meetings, and then I just loved it, and it was a support group about relationships and things like that, and I just said, oh, I want to help people. I want to work with people like this, and then I decided to go back to school to become a psychotherapist, and that point was really like tough to tell anybody, like especially parents. What do you mean you're making six figures? And that was back in the 90s when it was really a lot of money, and how can you do that? And are you crazy? And that was what the dialogues that was going in my mind of what they were going to say, and they didn't say anything. They're like, okay, well, it's your life.
Yeah, look at the stories we create, right?
Absolutely. So it was, and I think they were surprised by the choice because they knew me, my family and friends, as this computer geek person, and didn't that allowed people to know me a little bit more as who I am, and for myself to know myself a little bit more as who I am.
So would you say that soul decision to move into that field began this journey because it was like you said yes to your soul, to your calling, instead of to a job?
Absolutely. It was a big change, and my number one non-proponent of it was my husband. He was like, "What do you mean? How much money are you going to make?" Was the first question.
Oh yeah.
And so I said, "Well, eventually, after a few years, I can make X." And he's like, "That's less than half of what you're making now." I was like, "Yeah, but I'll be a happier person, and I'll be easier to live with." So.
Oh, I believe that too. I believe we have to be happy. And when we come back from our break, Noemi, I'd love for you to tell us your internal journey as once you stepped into saying yes to your soul's calling. I'm really curious if divine synchronicity started to happen, which is what I found in my life and in interviewing others. I love those kind of conversations. So we'll be back in a moment. I'm with Noemi Grace. You can visit her at Noemi, Noemi, Grace.com. We'll be right back.
A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Inspiration for a woman's soul. Aspire Magazine, inspiring and supporting women on the path of self-discovery. Claim your free digital subscription today, which includes access to thousands of dollars of personal development bonus gifts from Team Inspiration partners. Claim your Aspire Magazine subscription today at subscribetoaspire.com.
Hey, America, we need to have a little talk. We've got more food than we know what to do with in this country, yet 17 million kids in America are struggling with hunger. Makes no sense. Luckily, the Feeding America nationwide network of food banks has volunteers gathering excess food and getting it to hungry kids. They're kind of like food angels. Hey, become a food angel yourself by supporting Feeding America in your local food bank at feedingamerica.org. We can't do it without your help. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Are you trying to get from point A to point B and need a little advice? Connect with the counselors at OMTimes Advisors. Whether you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual intuitive, the advisors participating at advisors.omtimes.com were carefully chosen based on their gifts, skills, and professionalism. OMTimes Advisors, connecting you with the best advisors in the business.
Hi everyone, this is Shay Parker, the host of Best of the Best, which airs live right here on IOM Radio every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific. I'm super excited to bring you expert guest hosts, spiritual discussions, free psychic readings, and so much more. I can promise that you will not want to miss this one-of-a-kind, fun, yet touching, down-to-earth show. Join us every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific on OTR-FM. This is Shay Parker, and I can't wait to see you there.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
Welcome back. You're listening to Inspired Conversations. I'm your host, Linda Joy, and with me today is psychotherapist and soul healer, Noemi Grace. So come on, girl, tell me about some of the juicy divine synchronicities that happened when you leaned into your soul's calling. I love these kind of stories.
Oh, I mean, looking back, there were some decisions that seemed just so unimportant, or maybe sort of almost impulsive. But I'm not typically that impulsive a person, but it was just like, oh, I'm going to do this, which, you know, I'm INFJ, so I'm not the spontaneous type. I'm more of the think about it, you know, plan it type. So there was this one decision to help volunteer at this personal growth workshop, and the person that was leading the team that was doing the volunteering turned out to be somebody that introduced me to shaman I studied with I apprenticed with for 11 years. And she actually introduced me to somebody who introduced me. I mean, it was like this chain of events that if I hadn't done this thing that I decided to do with a friend at the last second that gave it no thought, I met my spiritual teacher for many years, and I met one of my closest friends who also was so deep on her spiritual journey that it helped me so much. So it's the willingness to just, if it feels good, you know, like it feels good for me. If it was feel good, do it, because I'm not an impulsive person. You know, I'm somebody who would slow myself down to a crawl and not do it. So it was like, okay, for me it was leap, but if it feels good. But that's obviously not necessarily the best advice for everyone. But as I would see along the way, that they're looking back, there are so many different things. One of the funnier ones was that I was this computer software senior architect person with a big title, and I was going around the country one year doing a lot of trainings for the products we were developing, and I was traveling a lot. And I would sit in the airport reading my magazine or my book in like an eating area where there was very few people, because I usually traveled at not your typical travel times. And people would come up to me and say, "Is this seat taken?" pointing to the seat next to me, when there's no one else there. And then they would start telling me their life stories. And at the end, they say, "Are you a therapist?" And I'd say, "No, I'm not a therapist." "Well, you should be a therapist. You make a great therapist." And eventually I went to Germany with my boss on a business trip. And he starts telling me his life story, and he goes, "You know, you're really great at software, but you would be amazing as a therapist." So 2 years later, I said to him, "Do you remember that conversation in Germany?" He goes, "What conversation?" I told him. He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Well, I'm taking your advice. So here's my resignation. I'm going back to school." And
oh my,
yeah. I mean, it happened so many times. It happened like 6 to 8 times. Random people in random places, which were obviously not random. So I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'm supposed to be a psychotherapist. So I started to do that, and I met somebody who told me she loved going to Leslie, so I went there. I mean, I became friends with somebody who told me that, and so there was all these different things along the way. And then I did that volunteering thing, and it led me to this person that I met said to me, "Oh, I know you said you wanted to do shamanic work. This shaman's coming to a friend's backyard. Do you want to go? And she lives in your town. Do you want to go?" So then I met my good friend Marie Patrice and the shaman that I was working with for many years, and all of these people have helped me to learn and grow. And there was definitely synchronicity.
I call them spiritual breadcrumbs, right? It's like, okay, I don't know if she's paying attention right now, so I'm going to drop this in front of her. And it's happened so often in my life. And now it's almost like a fun game, isn't it? Like you expect them. And I always go, thank you for the validation. Or maybe you're thinking about a project. You're like, I wonder if now's the time. And suddenly someone reaches out to you and messages you, which happened to me yesterday, and asks about a project, the same project. And I'm like, okay, I know now that the time is right. It's little things. We have to be open to listening. And that's what I want everyone to understand from my conversations. We have to be willing to listen. The breadcrumbs are always there. The guidance is always there. But we have to be willing to do our part.
exactly. To listen and to be willing to do something different. So I actually have a radio show on OMTimes Radio, Access to Angels and Grace, with Lisa Berry, my co-host, and she had interviewed me after I published my book last year, An Intimate Dialogue with God, The Miraculous Power of Unconditional Self-Love, big title. And we had this amazing interview. She called me back immediately after the interview, and she's on her OMTimes radio show, and she said to me, "You could do a radio show." And I was like, "Huh, it's kind of something I've thought about." I watched a Hallmark movie once, and there were these people doing a radio show, and I thought that would be cool. And she goes, "We could do one together." I had never met this woman. I still haven't met this woman, but she's my co-host, and it's been amazing. The opportunity came, and my first thought was, well, that's ridiculous. And then I thought, no, I'm listening. I could do a radio show. And I just love it. It's so much fun.
It's because you were open, right? You didn't shut it down, Absolutely. Let fear shut it down. So as your journey progressed, was there a moment when you started receiving this information that is now in your book called An Intimate Dialogue with God? Tell us about that time period of how that unfolded.
Sure. So it first started on 9/11, where I was completing my master's at Lesley, and I was in this clinical supervision class, and it was the only day that I had ever driven and parked in the train station, parked near the train station, and I was waiting for the train, and it wasn't coming, and it was so silent. And for you, since we both live in the same area, Porter Square train station was silent, and all you could hear was sobbing. And I looked around, and I just felt that day is the day I became an empath. I felt everything. I felt everyone's fear. I felt my fear. I was overwhelmed by it, and I said, "Use me for the healing of the world." And I said that out loud, and I said it out loud a few times, and then I took it like a mantra, and I was just saying it internally for hours and hours, maybe 5 hours that day. And so I offered that I did that prayer. I offered that, and then many years later, I'm on the elliptical in 2012, and I'm listening to these affirmations, and I've got this affirmation recording going. "You're unstoppable. Go, girl. You can do it." And so I'm listening to these affirmations, and all of a sudden, silence. The affirmations recording stops and wouldn't start it again. And instead, I heard, "Love is the fabric of freedom. Forgiveness paves the way to freedom. You will know when you are free, when there's nothing left to forgive, because you see through the eyes of love." I was totally blown away. I was because I was hearing it at the same volume as the affirmations that were coming into my ear. And I was like, whoa, where did that come from? I got off and I wrote it down, and I just stared at that for a long time. And I was just blown away, because I knew that I couldn't invent that. That's just, my mind was not going anywhere near there. Forgiveness was something I was struggling with. Judgment was something very common for me. And so I just put that in my heart, and I would read it for years, and here and there. I would leave it for a month, and then I'd read it, and then I'd leave it for 2 months, and I'd read it. And it took 3 years later that I wrote in my journal, and I remember the date, January 1st, 2015, where I was like, this year I will reclaim my joy and embrace what is. And in response to that, I started to get messages. It was almost like responses to that. So here's what you're going to have to do. Learn to see from eyes of love. See everything from eyes of love. What do you see when you look at this from love? When you look at your life, when you look at yourself? What do you choose if you choose from love? And I started to receive all of this when I was in meditation. I was doing meditation every day, and I still do. It's such an important part of my life. And I had been meditating daily for 6 months, and then all of these messages started to come to me. And I just started writing them by hand, because I'm in meditation. I wasn't pulling out my computer. And that eventually formed my book, and I have material for many more books. It's been very very powerful. And it was because I offered to be of service, which I didn't realize till the divine told me. This is why because I'm like, hey, why me? I'm just an average person. And like that's a bad thing, and
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a pretty wonderful thing. And that was because I offered myself on that 9/11 when I was so desperate and didn't know what else to do. So it's just all of the breadcrumbs along the way, and all of these things that seem random that eventually are turning points that you start walking in a different direction and wind up somewhere different.
Such a beautiful story. And I have to say, as you shared the words that you heard, that first morning when the affirmation stopped, you could feel the truth in the words, like it resonated in my body. So I want to say thank you for sharing them and for bringing them to the world. And we're going to take a break, and when we come back, I want to talk about, because in your book you say self-love is the missing key to this miraculous transformation that we're all yearning for. So let's dive into that when we come back from our break, Noemi.
Okay, sounds good.
I'll be back in a moment. I'm with Noemi Grace, psychotherapist and soul healer, and author of An Intimate Dialogue with God. You can learn more at noemigrace.com. We'll be right back.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
Are you being called to step into your truth and embrace your divinity? Are you ready to align your heart and soul, live an authentic life, and become a divine magnet for love and abundance? It's time to listen to your inner wisdom and clear the blocks holding you back from your best life. Leading intuitive prosperity coach, Akashic Records practitioner, and evidential medium Jamie Hearn of LiveYourDivinity.com empowers and supports spiritual women like you to align your inner and outer worlds, embrace your soul's truth, and live your divinity. Through her intuitive gifts, grounded wisdom, and empowered coaching, Jamie guides women back into sacred alignment with their truth. Visit LiveYourDivinity.com to learn more about Jamie's empowering programs and to schedule an Akashic record reading.
This is Terry Van Horn, and I want to invite you to join me for my weekly radio show, Healing Light, on OMTimes Radio every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On Healing Light, we want to bring love, light, and blessings into your world. You can find out more about us at www.healinglightonline.com. Blessings.
Me, a cat moving in with a new human. It took a little getting used to. She has these weird games she likes to play, like this giant feather. She sticks it in my face. I swat it away. She sticks it in my face. I swat it away. It's almost like she thinks I enjoy it. But seeing how much fun she gets out of it, well, I guess it makes it all worth it. Humans.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
Welcome back. You're listening to Inspired Conversations. I'm so glad you're here with me and my special guest today. With me is Noemi Grace, author of An Intimate Dialogue with God. So, Noemi, you say self-love is the missing key to miraculous transformation. Let's talk about that.
Sure. I think we all would love miraculous transformation. And so why self-love is the missing key? A lot of times for me, in my experience, and also in working with so many people, we kind of set some goals. We have some strategies we're implementing, trying to make things happen, to make a change happen. And if our self-love is limited, then that means that we are resisting parts of us, maybe even rejecting parts of us. And so all of that is creating, it's like roadblocks, like friction. And along with self-love comes self-acceptance. And what I found out, and what there's a chapter in my book called The Self-Acceptance Miracle, that self-acceptance is that fuel that takes you into self-transformation. And so when we don't love ourselves, we are, it's like we're leaking energy. We're slowing ourselves down, and we're putting up walls, roadblocks to what we do want in life. And so most of us love ourselves to some degree, but it's those places that we don't love, those things that we don't love about ourselves, to embrace those things, to see them with eyes of love, to see them, to have that compassion for yourself about that, because without the self-love, it's a struggle. And when you don't have self-love, you're going to see things from the perspective of some blinders, because there's pieces of yourself that you can't acknowledge or accept. So you're not including those in the equation, and you're creating all this resistance for yourself. And so, Carl Jung said, what you resist persists, right? So if you want to transform, but here's the persistence of what you don't want. And
it's powerful, isn't it? And you said a word that really resonates with me too is compassion, self-compassion. We're so hard on ourselves, and we say things to ourselves that we would never say to another human. And one of the things I've done with clients is say, when you hear yourself saying something harsh to yourself, ask yourself if you would ever say that to a child. Because really, when we're being tough on ourselves, I believe we're speaking to that inner child, that wounded part of ourselves, right? And they're like, of course I would never say that to my grandchild or my child. I said, then why would you say it to yourself? Because within you is an inner child, and these things are just coming up so you can heal her. How did you switch your own conversation to a more self-conversation to a more loving one?
Really because of what I received, the messages that I received from the divine, which first started with seeing through eyes of love, like how I was very self-critical, and because I was self-critical, I was internally judging everybody else, and so that's why I knew when I heard those words on the elliptical that they weren't mine, because they were completely contrary to what I was saying inside my head. So why inside my head would I start saying something that was contrary to what I've been always saying to myself? So, so that self-acceptance is so vital, and it's just seeing yourself differently, being able to see the vulnerability that, okay, so I'm wounded here. I have trouble accepting this piece of me, but send it love. Sometimes I could be a little bitchy, and if I could be irritable, and a lot of times that was because I had anxiety, and things that I was anxious about, I'd get irritable about and be a little bit, agitated, and so it's like being able to see that with eyes of love. See, wow, okay, that anxiety is creeping in. It's getting bigger. It's really, really running my life right now. Having that compassion for it, having that compassion for myself. Wow, kind of suffering from that. And it's okay. It's okay that I'm anxious. It's okay that I'm feeling that way. I'm going to love myself anyway. And I'm going to tell myself something kind, like take the time, breathe, do some meditation, maybe go for a little walk, dance, whatever it is, but breathe. And so I started to change the dialogue because I started to receive these messages from the divine. And then I didn't know that they were going to be in a book, but I figured they were so powerful for me because I started to apply them. And it started to change the dialogue. There's a piece, they call it the context. It's like every day say, I love myself enough to. What is it I love myself enough to do that I'm not doing now? Or
that's a good one.
Now. Yeah, exactly. So, okay, I love myself enough to stop criticizing myself so much, to stop being so harsh, or to take that walk more often, get outside. So whatever it is that small shifts along the way, but being willing to just like take those blinders off, take the glasses off that we're looking at that's with the filter of how we see things, and say, what if I was fully loving and accepting this? What would I see? And what would I do?
It's such a beautiful reframe. Like you can feel the energy difference.
Yeah.
And you can feel it in your body, and I believe that's what we all need. So how does self-love assist us in manifesting positive change in the aspects of our lives where we're struggling or stuck? And I know you just touched a little bit about it, but let's dive deeper into that, because it's, as you said a moment ago, without self-love, right, we're going to still be working from the old scripts. That's how I understood it.
Sure.
So
yeah.
Talk about that more.
Yeah. So a lot of times we're going after the goal of the change of what we want and not seeing we would already have that. If we really wanted it, why don't we already have that? And what are the things that are obstacles to us having or being what it is that we want to be? If we want to be more of a leader in our life, or somebody who can take a stand for herself, or someone who does more meaningful work, or whatever it is that we would like to see differently in our life, a lot of times we focus on the goal. We're very goal-oriented as a society, and so we're focusing on this goal, okay? Right? So, and I used to be a life coach, so focus on this goal. What do? You know, here are my steps to the goal. Here are my sub-goals, and we're focusing on this goal. And for a lot of those things, it's like, if we really wanted it, we have such amazing power to manifest. We could have it now, but why don't we have it now? And so what stops us is that internal self-talk, which is often so self-judging and self-limiting. Like, oh, you couldn't do that. Oh, yeah, you're really going to try that? Oh, come on, really? You're not smart enough. You're not beautiful enough. You're not this enough, that enough. And so when we start to work on what's in the way, we can now remove some of those obstacles. And so there's a place in my book where the divine says, do you believe that love heals? And I said, love conquers all. That was being kind of a little snide there. Oh, love conquers all. And they're like, no, love heals, melts, and enlivens. Love doesn't conquer. It doesn't fight, resist anything. It heals. It is the greatest healing force in the world. And the greatest healing force for ourselves, we can heal ourselves if we love ourselves. Yeah, we might need some psychotherapy or different healing modalities to help that, but our non-love is our number one obstacle. And so when we can start to look at what are the obstacles, and there may be fear, which is, of course, the antithesis of love, and all of these other things there, but we don't tend to look at that non-love. And when we see, okay, I'm not loving myself enough to do that. I really want to have these great relationships, but I'm not loving myself enough to say no to a relationship that's where I'm being put down, or being neglected, or I'm not loving myself enough to walk away from that big paying job. And so I'm not loving myself enough to say positive things to me to give me the courage to change. And so that self-love is a huge obstacle to why we don't have things. And so it's important to focus on, like, let's be willing to love ourselves a little more. And what's a little teeny step that I could do? What is that little crumb of more love? What would that look like? Could I just be a little kinder in the way I talk to myself? So when I go, oh, stupid, if a lot of people I hear, clients, what I'll hear them say is stupid me. But then if they're going to say something positive, they talk in the third person. You did a good job today. Well,
I know, isn't that funny?
Great job today. Yes, I've noticed that.
I've been guilty of that too, and I noticed it a couple of years ago, and I'm like, why do we do that?
Yeah, it's so fascinating that we're going to identify ourselves with the negative and label it as me, but then when there's somebody does something, it's like it's like a third person. It's not really us, it's them somehow. So So it's that willingness to say, okay, if I loved myself more, how would it help? What would I do differently? Because we would do something differently. We would be different. So as a result of being different, if we love ourselves more, we're going to do things differently. We might do the same things, but we'll do them differently.
So beautifully said. We're going to take our last break, and when we come back, I would love, if you're open to it, to share in any practices that you do in your own daily life that maybe you could share to inspire women to try something different, right? To change a conversation, whatever process or ritual that you feel led to share. And
Absolutely.
We'll be back in a moment. I'm with Noemi Grace, psychotherapist and soul healer and author of An Intimate Dialogue with God, The Miraculous Power of Unconditional Love. Learn more at noemigrace.com. We'll be right back.
A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Ladies, do you suffer with chronic pain that prevents you from living an active, happy life? It's time to get the professional support to let go of the long-standing patterns in your body, mind, and emotions that are causing your pain. When you clear the emotional, spiritual, and physical patterns that fuel your pain cycle, you can live a pain-free, pleasure-filled life once again. Stop the Pain specialist Jacqueline Kane merges 15 years in private practice as a healer and over 30 years in healthcare with her innate wisdom and a multitude of healing modalities, including Bowen work, EFT, evolutionary meditation, soul clearing, and ancestral energy clearing to create unique, results-oriented healing protocol for each. She sees clients virtually and in her Connecticut office. Visit JacquelineMKane.com to learn more.
OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hi everyone, this is Shay Parker, the host of Best of the Best, which airs live right here on IOM Radio every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific. I'm super excited to bring you expert guest hosts, spiritual discussions, free psychic readings, and so much more. I can promise that you will not want to miss this one-of-a-kind, fun, yet touching, down-to-earth show. Join us every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific on OTRFM. This is Shay Parker, and I can't wait to see you there.
The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
This is OTR FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
Hi, you're listening to Inspired Conversations. I'm your host, Linda Joy, and with me today is Noemi Grace, and we're talking about self-love and our inner dialogue. So I believe that many of us, and I raise my hand too, have struggled or are still struggling with self-love. On your journey as not only your personal journey, but also in your work as a psychotherapist and soul healer, have you found some rituals or processes that have supported you that you might use yourself daily?
Oh, yes, definitely. I mean, the first thing I started to do consistently was meditate. And I've been meditating every day for the last 5.5 years. And it was 6 months into the meditation that I started to receive these messages. So it's like every morning for me, meditating. Another practice is the practice of gratitude. So waking up in the morning and being grateful. So when I step out of bed, I put my hands in like a prayer pose and hold my hands in front of my chest and say, thank you. Thank you. And then I will say thank you for this day and thank you. And I'll give a few things, and it's not always the same things. And so that gratitude in the morning, and then at night, a positive reflection on the day. What did I feel good about myself today? What did I feel good about? Just taking a moment. I may reflect on, okay, I could have done that better, but we're so good at doing that. There's also, what do I feel good about from today? And so it's allowing myself to revisit the day and pull out that juice, that essence, that gem that's there. That, wow, I really feel good about how I helped that client. Or I feel good about how I didn't snap at my husband how I have in the past. I was able to show compassion. So those are some really basic ones. I do different energy practices to keep my energy level high. I also do like some of the practices from my book, which one is that I mentioned already, which is I love myself enough to, I ask myself that, or today, I love myself enough too. And for me, it's like making that time, like especially now, with
everything going on.
With everything going on, I love myself enough to take a walk. I love myself enough to call a friend, and it's also that, what do I see when I look at this from love? Whenever I'm judging myself or somebody, like if I could step back and put on that filter of love, the glasses of love, those sunglasses that will filter in the love, those love glasses, what would I see? And what would I choose if I choose from love? So that's when I'm feeling unsettled, a lot of times I will use those two questions to look at it, to remind me and help me to look at things differently. And it's the habits of doing these things over time that really helps.
The gratitude practice for me changed my life 28 years ago. I started it just the morning, and I struggled. I was a single welfare mom trying to get my life together, and and I had a way. I always had a lot of anxiety back then. My daughter's 36, just to put it into context. She was a little girl. And I remember reading Louise Hay's book, and she said, your morning gratitude practice is key. And I remember going, yeah, what the hell do I have to be grateful for? That was my mindset.
Sure,
right?
Of course.
But I did it because I loved Louise Hay, and I had just found her. But I can remember many mornings struggling because my mind had already been programmed to see the worst in everything. But here's the beautiful part. I stuck with it. And suddenly, after, I'd say 1 or 2 months, struggling to find anything good, to suddenly flowing 5 grateful things, 10 grateful things. And then I felt, and I just wrote about this, and then I suddenly felt this lightness of spirit coming into me. I felt lighter, less dense, more joy. I'm like, ooh, I want more of this. And I added the evening practice. And so it's almost like, for me, gratitude reprogrammed my wiring. Is that how you would describe it for yourself?
Yeah. What I noticed, and I listen to Abraham, and, they talk about how, the first 17 seconds of the day will program you for the day, and, how to wake up and be in high vibration. And I was noticing that I was first thought that I would be in bed. It was always an anxious thought. Oh, I got to do this, or what about that, or a judgmental thought, and then I would pull myself out of that into a more positive thought. So I said, at least when I get out of bed, the first thought when I step out of bed, once I catch myself in that anxious thinking in bed, I'm getting out of bed. First thought when I get out of bed is going to be gratitude. And so I just stand there in gratitude and offer the gratitude to the universe. I'm so grateful. There's so much to be grateful for. And allowing myself to feel it. And I just stood there and wouldn't let myself move until I could feel grateful. So sometimes I'd say thank you, and I was not feeling thank you. It's like, okay, you sit there, kind of like time out.
Yeah.
Gratitude. Okay, what am I grateful? Okay, I'm grateful now. And it really shifted the day. And it's actually, the thoughts in bed are less anxious and less judgmental. I can't say that I fully wake up every morning with the most positive thoughts the first time, but I'm certainly shrinking the time that I'm in those thoughts, and there's less of them. So gratitude is so vitally important.
And the other thing I noticed for myself is I give myself permission to feel those other things. And because I'm aware of when those other thoughts come, anxiety, worry, etc., I go, oh, there's that thought again. And then I'm blessed that I know how to recalibrate back over. So I let them come, and I had to stop judging them because I was still struggling, like, well, law of attraction and da-da-da. And I finally said, said, bullshit. We have to feel everything. Let it flow through us. If not, that's when it gets stuck. So I feel it, and then I know how, I call it recalibrating. I recalibrate, and I'm back into my gratitude and joy and love. But, like in today's world right now, we're constantly recalibrating. We have to be, because we're picking up everything else. I'm just so grateful that there's leaders like you sharing your wisdom, sharing the tools that others need, and that's what's so needed right now. We can't hide right now. We need to shine so bright so that those who don't have these tools, you, me, we can inspire them and help them.
Yeah. And
so I'm so passionate about what I do in having amazing guests like you on the show, so I can shine a spotlight on the work you're doing in the world.
Thank you so much, because it's so important. Every one of us plays this vital part, and to be not living in fear at this time, to really embrace that love and gratitude, be grateful rather than fearful, and seeing things with love and seeing what's going on from a loving perspective rather than like, oh my God, we're in trouble, So it's so important. Each one of us has such a vital role. To me, it's a time for each one, for all of us as a collective, to really bring our highest self, to step into that, because there's such a need, because there's such pervasive fear and anxiety and negativity. And so bringing that love, bringing that gratitude as the antidote.
So true. And I'm so blessed to have you here with me. And in our last 60 seconds, is there anything you would like to leave our audience with as a takeaway from this conversation, or maybe a message from your heart?
I want everybody to know they're so much more amazing than they think they are. And they really are deserving of love. And whatever they may have a trouble accepting, or whatever you may have trouble accepting or feel like is not good enough, you are more than good enough. You are truly, truly, inside of you is such a bright gem that you are. And learning to love yourself, you can discover that gem, and that will change your whole life. So I'm really grateful for this opportunity, Linda. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Thank you. Thank you for being you and for doing the work that you're doing in the world. And I want to share with everyone, visit Noemi at Noemi, and that is Noemi, Grace.com, to learn more about the work she's doing in the world and to order a copy of her book. Until next time, my friends, choose love, choose joy, choose happiness.
Thanks for listening to Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy. Join our sacred space every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern and meet leading female visionaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. Inspired Conversations with Linda Joy is a soulful venue where guests share the obstacles they've overcome, along with wisdom and lessons learned on their personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired conversations to empower you on your path to authentic and soulful living.